This show is brought to you by Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall presents the program Rhiannon Giddens, Songs of Our Native Daughters. Giddens teams up with kindred banjo players to shine new light on African American women's stories of struggle, resistance, and hope. With unflinching, razor-sharp honesty, they confront frequently sanitized views about America's history of slavery, racism, and misogyny from a powerful Black female perspective. The performance takes place on November 4th, 2022 at 8 p.m. To purchase tickets, visit carnegiehall.org. Carnegie Hall, your seats are waiting. Hey, what's up, good people? It's Jay Ray, the co-host of Q Points, and I wanted to come to you because there are two really important ways that you can support our show. One is by subscribing to it wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. Q Points is pretty much everywhere. The other thing that you can do is you can visit us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on Podchaser, and you can leave us a star rating. Please rate us 5 stars because you know you love Q Points. And on Apple Podcasts and on Podchaser, you can actually leave us a written review. It's not required, but it really does help to spread the word about the show, and it helps people to discover it as they're looking for new podcasts to listen to. We're always appreciative of you supporting Q Points. We thank you so much for all that you've done for us so far, and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to your favorite podcast, Q Points. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is Jay Ray. And of course, for this very special conversation, our fourth part in our country music series, we have our brother here. Big Mike is with us, of course, again.
What's happening, fellas? Thanks for having me back.
Well, listen, as usual, Q Points is dropping the needle on Black music history. And as J. Ray stated in the beginning, you guys have been blessed with all these different episodes with us talking about being Black in country music and everything that entails. And Big Mike has truly been a teacher to I know specifically me, because I haven't really dibbled and dabbled in that area of the pond myself, but I have grown such an appreciation for what it is that country music from a Black lens is representing. And quite frankly, J. Ray, you know, if you've been on any type of social media recently, Black women specifically in hip hop are having a really hard time right now. It's a lot of stray bullets flying around. There's a lot of accusations. It's just really tough right now for Black women. And what I would like to see, and what I am seeing, is that there is a glimmer of hope for Black women in country music. And so we're going to just leave all that other stuff to the side and just come on down to the countryside for a little reprieve and a little and excuse me, and a little relaxation from everything that's going on in the more popular forms of music right now. And I did put up air quotes. But yeah, we are talking about Black women in country music specifically. And there were 3 albums, 3 bodies of work from 3 different types of women, if you ask me, whose generations span decades. Some span several decades. Others have just begun in comparison to others. And I think it's a very wide pool for us to pull from. So, gentlemen, J. Ray especially, why don't you go ahead and set it off with the choices that we are bringing forth to the people this evening, because y'all going to want to write this down.
Yes, folks are going to want to write this down. And I want to bring, piggybacking off of what you just said, Sir Daniel, I think building off of the last conversation that we had, and I think we may have said this then, in the R&B space, there's been this whole R&B is dead conversation, right? And people are asking, where are the singers? People not singing anymore. They're singing in country. Okay. These folks is over here singing their faces off.
And we love to see
it. We love to see it. So one of the things that we wanted to do is spend some time just lifting up the breadth of different types of records and different types of sounds that Black women have brought into the country space. So there was a few albums. So surprisingly enough, I don't know that people realize this, but Tina Turner's debut album, Tina's first solo album, Ike Turner had this grand idea to introduce Tina to a wider market, and he decided to do that by releasing a solo country album for Tina Turner, which was fascinating for me to learn. What was even more fascinating for me was how much I love this record. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But the second one is actually a record that was near and dear to me, which was released in 1995. So almost 20 years from between when Tina's record was released and when Cassandra Wilson's New Moon Daughter came out, which was so it's so funny how we categorize these things, right? So Tina Turner's record was an R&B record, categorically, right? But it was a country album. Cassandra Wilson's New Moon Daughter is a jazz record. And it is, but it's also kind of a country record too, right? And the last record we are going to spend some time on, and my God, I don't even know where these two people come from, but really we wanted to bring the Warren Treaty into this, which features Tanya Trotter.
Tanya Blunt.
Yeah, Blunt. Well, Tanya Blunt Trotter, same person.
Correct.
And her husband. And oh my God. The record is so just magical. So we're going to talk about these three albums.
They were just recently here.
They were just recently in Atlanta.
In Georgia, yeah.
Yeah, and people apparently were just like losing their minds. So that is where we wanted to go, spend some time talking about Black women through the years in country music. And I have a question. So Big Mike, I'm going to ask you this question before we talk specifically about these records. Why is it so hard? Why is it so hard? It shouldn't be as hard as it is to make waves in this genre.
It's hard because there are gatekeepers. It's the same thing we were talking about with Mickey Guyton, and she was talking about in the documentary for Love and Country, that they wanted her to fit into this box. This is, if you're going to be in this genre, this is what our females look like, and this is what our females present as. And we as African Americans, especially Black women, they don't fit in that box. That is a box placed solely for blue eyes, blonde hair, white women. That doesn't work that way. It doesn't work the same way. And so I think that's where a lot of Black women have struggled to really make it big. And I think Mickey Guyton understood that she had to change her attack. She had to she was like, no, I don't fit in this box. I'm not going to fit in this box. So either deal with who I am or not. And it's really a testament to her perseverance in that space, especially since there have not been a lot of people of color, especially women, in that space. So I think that's why it's been so tough. The gatekeepers, they tell you what it's supposed to look like, what it sounds like. And so I think that's why there's been so much trouble trying to break through in acceptance.
You know what? Okay, so that actually brings up a really good point. So for all intents and purposes, I think when we look at Tina Turner, which was hilarious, they named the album Tina Turns Country On, which I thought was totally hilarious.
What?
That's what they named it. That's what they named it. That's hard. That's a hard sell, y'all. That was going to be a hard sell.
Yeah. but not. I will say not, because in my opinion, if we're talking about Tina Turner, the voice alone, Tina Turner's voice lends itself to country music.
Oh yeah.
To blues, to all of that stuff. So it's not that hard of a stretch.
Yeah.
For her musically.
No, and that's I think the thing that we learned. So I do think that Ike's idea was solid, right? It's like, okay, listen, I'm going to go and get a Nashville producer. So they got Tom Thacker. I'm going to go and we're going to pull some standards, and Tina's going to do these standards, but in Tina style, right? So this record is a country album through and through. But what I love is how Tina like oozes through it. And it's like, it is truly a Southern Black woman singing these country songs. That's what this record is.
It almost didn't even sound like her. That first track, I said, this is Tina Turner? Really? and literally I had some notes. I was writing down notes. And I said, my first reaction is, doesn't sound like Tina. It doesn't sound like Tina. And then I go, almost like Janis Joplin, like her voice, the way her voice fits over that music is because she has such a gravelly voice. And so and she's presenting it a lot more softer than a Tina, track would or record would. So I was like, oh, okay, this is her debut album. This is not even what she's known for. It's a very different sound. I understand what Ike was trying to do in that move. He was trying to appeal to the more of the white audiences. And what I love about this album, and I also think it's sad, is that it was nominated for a Grammy, but it was an R&B Grammy.
Isn't that nuts?
I could tell by looking. I could tell you. I see what you're saying here, that they softened up her image. Like on this album cover is very different from what she and Ike were doing and what she, of course, later on is known for. So yeah, they softened her up. But I wonder why the Grammy committee put it in the R&B. I wonder if was it presented as a country album? That's the question.
It's a good question.
To the committee. To the committee.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I was surprised when I read that this record, I wasn't surprised that it got nominated for a Grammy. I was like, this is a solidly good album.
Right.
Which I have a thought about too. But I was surprised. I'm like, an R&B record, like this is not, and I can see why. It's because she's a Black woman. Like that's it.
That's it. Yeah. And to me, again, it goes along with the notes that I have. It says sounds like a classic country album of the 70s. And then I look at it and I look at the research and it says an R&B album. I'm like, how did anyone confuse this with an R&B record? It blows my mind.
Yeah, that makes me. Here's the question though. As I was listening to the record, I was in the car and I was jamming, right? And what's criminal? There's two things that are criminal. And I know Tina don't care about this because she don't care nothing about anything from that era. It's like, baby, it ain't available on streaming. Fine. I don't care. Like, I don't own that stuff. I wish it was available on streaming so that people could be introduced to it. But two, if this record had become a hit, Tina's career would have been incredibly different than the career that we know her for today. Had this worked, I do think this could have opened doors, the doors that they thought that Charlie Pride could have opened. Had Tina Turner's Country On worked, we
say that 5 more times
right,
faster.
Right. I think it's Tina Turns the Country On. It's a lot going on in that title. But had this worked, we would have seen, I think, more Black folks enter this. This would have been, I think, the record different than Charlie Pride because it was so Black sounding. It was so Black sounding. And so Tina Turns the Country On is brilliant. And I feel like it's criminally, I didn't know it existed until getting ready to do this show with y'all. I had never heard of it.
Do you even think?
I didn't. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, in all my crate digging, I've never seen this before, and I've seen pretty much all of the Tina Turner and the Ike and Tina stuff in pretty much every store I've been in, and this is the first time I've ever seen it.
Right, and it's a Grammy-nominated album. It's her debut album, and it's a Grammy-nominated album, and the fact that it just kind of just disappeared into the ether is very strange to me. And then you look at the writers on this. James Taylor wrote a song that she did. Dolly Parton did a song that she did. Bob Dylan wrote 2 songs that she did on this album. So like, it's really served up to the masses at that point. Dolly Parton, James Taylor, Bob Dylan, and it's almost like it just doesn't even exist. And I find that very hard to believe. It's very troubling, actually, that this is her debut album and no one seems to really know anything about it.
I just wanted to make a quick point to picking up with Mike. PJ Morse, that first song that you mentioned, Mike, apparently wrote that specifically for Tina, which is probably one of the reasons why you like, oh my God, that doesn't even sound like her. Like, he conceived of this song as like, okay, this is going to be the song for her to sing, because most of the other things are, of course, covers of these other famous writers. But yes, it was served up on a silver platter, and it is criminal that we don't know until 2020, that we didn't know until this group didn't know until 2022 that happened.
Yeah.
But so I guess my question is, are we really surprised? Because like to your point, J. Ray, earlier, Tina Turner has, to her credit, crafted a very specific career. And, once she was able to take complete control of it, like she wanted everything to be a far cry and a distant memory from what she started out doing. And so who knows, maybe it was by design that this album didn't see the light of day. And you know how artists are, they're very peculiar about their art and the things that they create. So it could have been one of those things where she was, and I'm doing a lot of conjecture here, but it could have been one of those things where she was just like, darlings, I'm beyond all of that. I'm sitting here in where's
the south of France somewhere?
The south of France now, and all of that stuff is, it's very country. Like, listen, everybody knows about Nutbush City Limits, but they know about that because of the movie.
Right.
And that's probably as hard as she'll go, But again, especially you, Mike, you have really opened our eyes and turned us on to a lot of different music. So, J. Ray, Cassandra Wilson.
Oh my God.
Whose voice, another one whose voice is built for country when you think about it.
Cassandra, politics aside, that's different. I might edit that out. But God, I just wish.
Leave it in.
Right. So this record personally opened my eyes. So this is, I think, if I was going to have a country introduction to like a record that I would put in like a country canon, this would be that record for me. This was kind of like this would have been my gateway into like similar sounding things, stuff with banjos and, a little bit different. So Cassandra Wilson's New Moon Daughter was released in 1995. And it includes, like a lot of these records tend to include, several covers from, other writers, and 5 songs by her. And it is a jazz record, but more than that, I almost see it as a fusion record because it's very country. Like, it's a very country record too. And I remember, and blues, and I remember listening to it in 1995, and it plays like a film to me. This movie puts me in a field somewhere deep in the South. It literally plays like a film to me, where I'm like walking through the songs, and most of these songs are covers. And so this was a very different kind of record than Tina, where I felt like the Tina record was very kind of straight ahead. This was, of course, a jazz album, and it infused all of the jazz sensibilities into songs that I think have this rich country foundation. And that's why I thought it was interesting. I thought that what Cassandra did was it was different than what other jazz folks were doing at that time. And that's why I still love it today. And it was a different kind of Black woman showing up in the country space.
Well, remember I said that us as Black people, we usually enter a space and then we innovate in that space.
Mhm.
That's what it sounds like in this album. I don't know Cassandra Wilson and her other works. I've only know this album, but it sounds like she's trying to innovate in those spaces, and it goes right down to the people that she worked with. That one of that "Love Is Blindness" song written by Bono, The Edge, and a few other gentlemen. Like, that is not something you would see on a blues album / country album at that point. Bono and The Edge, like, from U2, like, it's a very interesting thing. And then you go a couple tracks down, and then there's a Hank Williams song on there.
Yep.
And so you're like, how does that work? How does that work? But she seems to make it work. And we just kind of float. The sound design on the last track, where you can hear the I don't know what they are. It's like crickets or whatever it is, where it makes you sound like you're like in the bayou, you're just floating along. Where you're talking about a movie, you can literally hear that. Close your eyes and think that you're floating along on this boat in the middle of the bayou, or wherever you think that thing is. But it's a very interesting. It's not traditional by any means of the imagination. Like, Tina is more traditional. This is not traditional. And so it's a very interesting album to really listen to. And if you look at some of the things that were said about the album, a lot of people did not like this album.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They thought it was way too slow, way too I don't know if melancholy is the word for it, but I guess for her, it was just too slow. There needed to be something a little bit more upbeat and more rhythmic. But I enjoyed it for what it was. It kind of reminds me of that smooth jazz that we get, that contemporary smooth jazz, with those. And then there's one song where the upright bass, that bass line is crazy. And I'm like, man, that's nuts. So it was interesting to see. That is innovation in the space. That is an example of innovation in that space.
Yep. No, absolutely agree. And so this record opens with, of course, one of the most emotional Black songs. It opens with "Strange Fruit." And one of my favorite renditions of that song, because it has all the things. You got like this kind of steel guitar, like stabbing throughout the song. But then, like I think I may have mentioned to y'all, the Sun House cover, the Death Letter cover, is one of my favorite. Listen, that thing right there is it for me.
Have you heard the White Stripes version of that?
I have, and yes, okay. I like it too. Okay. So yeah, like, huge fan of this. But yes, the "I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry," uses a straight up Hank Williams tune, just kind of in the middle of this country. So yes, to your point, it's not a traditional record. It's not traditional from a jazz sense. Definitely not traditional from a country sense. But that's the part I think is interesting, where you have these folks, these Black women, kind of showing up in this country space. Tina bringing this intense, deep soul to it. Cassandra bringing this atmospheric, kind of moody jazz element to it. It's just, the possibilities are endless with this genre, and I just want to see more Black folks do it.
Yeah.
If I could, just thinking about in the historical context, like, this came out in 95. And when I think about what was happening musically in 1995, especially for women, especially for Black women, there was a lot of, I think this was like the beginning of like the Lilith Fair era.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a new crop of women artists that were coming up that were blurring all these different lines. Desiree is heavy on the radio right
Mm-hmm.
now. Diane Reeves, all these different types of Black women, and in the larger culture, you had your other artists like your Sophie B. Hawkins and your Paula, what was her
Paula
name? I don't want to
Cole.
wait. Paula Cole.
Mm-hmm.
So there, it lent. I think it was the zeitgeist. I think it lent to that time period. So I think the time period could kind of cradle an album like this and make space for it, and because everybody was making space for their own art, regardless of what it sounded like, what it looked like. And so it was probably the very perfect time for this Moonchild, New Moon Daughter album to come out and just, pierce through the soundscape like you were saying. And so for your third album, J. Ray and Mike, the third album picks, let's get to it. Coming up into the future of Black country radio, Black country music.
Yeah.
That's it, though. I think you right on it. Yeah, like I think I said to y'all, when I first heard the Warren, so this was the first time I listened to the Warren Treaty. I had been hearing about them though for all year. People are like, "Oh, have you heard the Warren Treaty? Have you seen them? Have you heard them? Have you the Warren Treaty? They in Germany right now and they're tearing up the world." And I'm like, "Well, child, let me listen to the War and Treaty." So the War and Treaty is, of course, Michael Trotter Jr. and Tanya Trotter. We know her from the R&B side as Tanya Blunt. Sang in Sister Act 2, all of that, right? So I did not realize that, Tanya her and her husband had built this, this duo together. And I was listening to this record. And what song? I will find it. There was one of the songs I was like, this could drop in the middle of an R&B radio set, like right now. It would not, without batting an eye, this country song could drop on contemporary R&B, classic R&B radio and fit right in. We should be playing it. What did you think about
if we could?
What did you think about this one, Big Mike?
I loved it. And what I wrote down in my notes is this is kind of the love child of Tina and Cassandra.
Yep.
Wow. See, now look at that.
It is. It does this.
Yes, it literally melds those two genres in such a way that I'm like, oh, okay, I get where they were pulling these sounds from, and you're listening to these tracks, and you're right. There are some tracks on there that could probably fit right there on R&B radio, but there is, I forget what the name of the track is, but it could fit on a country radio station as well, right? Like, and so this album I think is so diverse, because then what is it? Hey Pretty Moon.
Yes.
It's the throwback to that little like Motown sound. Just like it touches on those. So it's just, this album just spans the generations. If you're listening very quickly, like if you're listening to it in its entirety, that's the thing. We get away from listening to albums in its entirety. You will get it moving through the years. You'll get genres in there that you didn't even think were possible by this. So you think you're getting a country record, but you're getting a country record, a rock record, a little bit of R&B record. And so I think this is what makes them so good, but it really is like this kind of melding of that Tina and Cassandra. I don't even know if you planned it that way, J. Ray, but it worked out really well as I was listening through it. And then I was like, oh, this is a natural sound from these two other artists here that came before them. So I loved it. I thought it was great. One of my favorite songs on there was Heart's Town. I think that song is really, really good. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yo, like, I do think you said something really interesting there too, Mike. And I know, Sir Daniel, I know that you agree with this as well. I think in the world that we live in, it's easy for us to just kind of pick because we're streaming, we could just kind of pick the thing that we want to like listen to. Like I want to listen to this and then this and then this. Sometimes we don't listen to the whole record because we heard Heartstown and like I love Heartstown, so I'm just going to play Heartstown and let it play whatever else is next, right? But I do think the beauty of this is you get rewarded by listening to the whole record. Because I was literally working. I was because with Tina, I was in the car. Cassandra I was very familiar with, so I play that in various. I was walking down the street playing a lot of that, like especially Death Letter. And then this, I was just kind of working away, and then I was like bopping. The people had to be looking at me because I was in the co-working space, like, yes. And getting so excited. So you get rewarded with this record by letting it play.
I think it's what I start thinking about is the difference this album in comparison to the other two is we have the dynamic of a couple in comparison to the two, which is solo, and the two women, going solo. And so I'm just thinking, so I wonder that, well, first of all, people love a duet album. People, if you think about it, people love like Kenny and Dolly. Yeah. They love Tony and Babyface album. So the Warren Treaty should fall right up under that. But what kind of that adds to the dynamic, right? Does it help support that Black woman in that space? Having this, this, of course, her husband who has her back in real life, having her back in the album and the types of topics that they're able to cover, give her like a leg up on, in the realm of country music.
Well,
go ahead, Mike.
What I was going to say is then, because specifically for that, is there's a track with just her. He's not even singing on it. So I think he recognizes that. I think them as a duo go, well, you're just going to sing on this track. I'm going to give you your time to shine. I'm going to show them the type of, power and technique and talent you have. And I think the track by itself, I think helps showcase that, she could do this on her own, but she's in this duo. And so I think to touch back on the question that you're asking, I think it does. The fact that he's able to take a step back and not even sing on the track, and it doesn't feel like you lost anything. Sometimes with duos, you put them together and then they go do something solo, and you're like, it just doesn't quite fit, and it doesn't even sound like they missed a beat. She's blowing all over that track by herself, and it doesn't even feel like you lost anything. And their harmonies are very tight. They have very good harmonies. They're very tight. But even by herself, I feel like she's a star.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And I think the other thing, what this also showcases is, no, Mike, you covered it. Like she's able to, I don't know. I think it's a situation where it's like, she shines because she's good and he shines because he's good. And what makes them good together is that they like each other. Like I felt like I was listening to that. I was like, oh, they just like each other. And they singing these songs together. They're enjoying being in this moment. They're enjoying being in the studio, but they understand where each other stands and what each other can do. And that's really cool. That's really cool. So I think it's also to the point of having two solos, but then it's like a duo, is still showing that all three of these women are showing up in these very unique ways. And even looking at this last record, which is two people, I don't feel like he's carrying her or she's carrying him. They're just like, nah, we married and we singing together. So
yeah,
get this work.
Yeah.
It's like, we got this.
Right.
We got to get, so that's why, so going back to the movie too, I am excited to see so many of these young people that will not be moved. They are like, we are going to sing this music and we are going to do us and show up the way that we're going to show up and make it happen, because I think if we did this show, if we do this show, like, again, this series, like 5 years from now, imagine all of the change that will have happened, because things are changing really fast right now.
Rapidly. Yeah, rapidly. And I think that what you were saying to your point about their being unapologetic about being in the space, I think Raina Roberts is a perfect example
Yep.
of being unapologetic in the country space, because outwardly you can look at her and see that she is different. She is carrying herself different. She stated that she wanted to be different, that she wanted to be who she wanted to be, but still be able to do country music. And that I think she's carrying that banner. I think Brittany Spencer is carrying that banner. Chapel Hart, which is recently on AGT, I think they're in the finals, which is the group of the three young Black women that is a country group. Like, I think they are trying to push forward and go, look, we love this music, but we're not going to apologize for who we are and how we do it and how we present ourselves. And I think, and going back to that Charlie Pride episode, I think Charlie Pride did just enough to make sure that he could hold the space in that genre the way he was, right? He didn't really push a lot of boundaries, not like Raina Roberts or Brittany Spencer or Jimmy Allen, those things, who Jimmy has been criticized for what he wears and him not being country enough, right? Because of the things that he wears and the things that he likes to wear and the eccentric things. But I think this group of young Black African-American country singers and performers, they're just no longer apologizing for it. We're going to put out the music that we want, and we're going to wear what we want. And we no longer care about the gatekeepers. We don't care about them anymore. We're just going to put it out there and let the people judge for themselves. And you've seen Jimmy. He's everywhere now. I can't even turn on anything anymore without seeing Jimmy Allen. And I'm happy for him. But you're like, yo, he just doesn't care. He's he's bowling now. He's got some bowling league that he's going to be on TV, PBA. Like, he's like, I'm going to do me and I'm going to do what I like. And I don't care about anybody else. And I think everyone else is starting to do that. I think, especially of Raina Roberts, like, just the way she's attacking this genre is changing. It's already a changing game, but she's going to change it again.
So you know how over the years, over the decades, there have been explosions. There was like the Latin explosion, and then the hip hop explosion, and then there was a country explosion. Are we on the precipice of a Black country explosion or some type of explosion when it comes to us in Black music, in country music?
I think so. Yeah. I truly believe that. I mean, I probably wouldn't even be here if I didn't believe that was the truth, right? Like, if I didn't truly believe that there was something coming, that there's this huge, like, explosion on its way, I don't even know if I would, and maybe I would, but I'd probably be on an island by myself. But I think other people are starting to understand what I love about this music. And that I'm attaching myself, I'm hitching my cart to these Black artists and going, hey, these guys can do it too. It's okay. And it's okay to let us in. It's okay to let us express ourselves and let us be African Americans in country music.
Yes.
I think that's the key, is letting us be African Americans in the genre. And stop trying to make us out to be something different.
And picking up on that, I think for us, it is reclaiming that which has a history in our culture. And there's so much power in that, knowing that, listen, this also is part of us and part of our history. And I think if more of our young people get a chance to experience country earlier, we will have more innovation in the space, because they're going to, it's like one more thing to kind of to mix in the pot of the stuff that we already do. So this is a fun time. This is a fun time.
It is. And I think it's reflective of today's society too, right? Of what's going on in the world, especially here in the US. People of color are reclaiming their rights to things that should have been ours in the first place. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, and I think I think black country music is a microcosm of exactly what's happening on the macro level when it comes to today's society. We're learning all of these things, history being erased, things that belong to us, things that we've created, things that we have done, finally getting credit for it and finally giving us the spotlight that we deserved in the first place. And so I love that, and that's what I love about country music, because it is inherently an American thing, right? In America, not just white America, America period. I'm an American, you're an American, you two are Americans. It doesn't matter what color our skin is, we're still Americans. And so I think black country music is going, we belong here too.
Mike,
you kind of dropped the mic on that one. I mean, that's it. See y'all later. It's clipped. It's clipped. Mike just already, he deaded everything right with that sentence right there. And so, with that said, J-Ray, you got anything left for the audience?
Listen,
any final words?
Not much. Okay, so the main things you already covered. Make sure that you follow us. Make sure that if you enjoy Q Points, leave us a tip. If you are I really dig those guys, subscribe on the website. In order to continue this, so the reality is, y'all, and I'm just going to say this because it's important. We are interested in growing the show. We can only grow the show with your support. There's no other way to do it. We're trying to build a staff. We are trying to get so many other things to be able to make the show even better. And so the way to do that is to become a member but definitely follow us, definitely join our mailing list, definitely stay in touch. So that is the main stuff.
Well, J-Ray, as I always say, after each and every single show, and this series is no different. In this life, you have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. I am Sir Daniel.
I am J-Ray.
And I'm Big Mike.
And this has been Q Points, the Black Country Music Special Edition, dropping the needle on Black music history. Thank you for watching.